I didn't recognize her at first. Just the sound of her laugh, light and careless, drifting down the cold aisle of the pharmacy while I stood there holding my husband's prescription like it was a fragile thing that might shatter if I squeezed too hard. It was the laugh that made me look up. I had been counting pills in my head the way I always did, morning dose, evening dose, the ones he hated because they made his mouth taste like metal. I was tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that settles behind your eyes and makes the world feel slightly out of focus. When I lifted my head, I saw her standing near the vitamin shelf, one hand resting on the counter, the other holding her phone, her body angled in a way that felt familiar. And then I saw the way my husband looked at her. That was the moment something quiet inside me cracked. Before cancer entered our lives, we were ordinary in the way long marriages often are. Not dramatic. Not perfect. Just steady. We had been married for 26 years. 26 Thanksgivings, 26 Christmas trees, 26 years of shared grocery lists, and folded laundry and arguments that never quite made it past bedtime. My husband, Richard, was never a romantic man. He showed love in practical ways, keeping the car serviced, mowing the lawn before I asked, bringing me soup when I had the flu. He worked as an operations manager for a small logistics company, the kind of job that didn't impress strangers but paid the bills reliably. I worked as a senior administrative assistant at a dental office, a job I liked because it kept my hands busy and my mind occupied. We didn't have children. That was a quiet grief we learned to live around, like furniture you bump into in the dark. Some days it hurt more than others. Most days it just was. When Richard was diagnosed, everything else fell away. Stage 3 lymphoma. The doctor said it carefully, like the words themselves might bruise us if handled roughly. I remember the smell. I remember the smell of disinfectant in the exam room, the hum of fluorescent lights, the way Richard's hand felt unusually warm in mine. I remember nodding as if I understood everything, even though my ears were ringing so loudly I barely heard the treatment plan. Chemotherapy. Radiation. Months, maybe years of appointments and uncertainty. I became a caregiver without ever deciding to be one. It happened the way grief often does, suddenly and then all at once. I handled the insurance calls, the paperwork, the bills that insurance didn't cover. I dipped into our savings without hesitation, then into my retirement fund. Then I took on extra hours at work, staying late to catch up on charts after everyone else had gone home. I told myself money was just money. You could earn it back. A life was different. Richard changed during treatment. The man who used to wake up early to make coffee now slept past noon. He lost weight, then gained it back in odd places. His hair thinned. His temper shortened. There were days he barely spoke at all, and others when he snapped over the smallest things. The wrong socks, the TV too loud, the soup too salty. I told myself this was normal. Illness changes people. Pain does that. Fear does that. Still, there were moments that made me pause. He started guarding his phone like it was a secret he might lose if he wasn't careful. He angled the screen away from me, took calls outside, silenced notifications he used to let ring freely. When I asked him about it, he said work was stressful, that his boss was demanding updates, that he didn't want to bother me. I wanted to believe him. There's a special kind of denial that comes when you're already carrying too much. You tell yourself you can't afford to doubt. Doubt requires energy. Doubt demands answers. And I didn't have room for either. The pharmacy became a second home to me. I didn't want revenge. Not the loud kind. Not humiliation or shouting or scenes in public places. I wanted truth. And I wanted fairness. That afternoon I did something I never thought I'd do. I asked Richard to come with me to one of his appointments. He hesitated. You don't have to. I want to, I said simply. At the clinic, I sat beside him as the doctor reviewed his latest scans. They were good. Very good. Remission was within reach. The doctor smiled, congratulated him, asked about his support system. My wife's been incredible, Richard said, squeezing my hand. I smiled back. Warm. Supportive. Inside, something settled into place. After the appointment, I suggested lunch. He agreed easily. He was in a good mood. Hope does that. At the restaurant, I ordered his favorite soup. Watched him eat. Listened as he talked about the future. Trips we might take, things we might do. When this is all behind us. When the waitress cleared the table, I said, I met Claire. His spoon froze halfway to his mouth. At the pharmacy, I continued calmly. She seems nice. He went pale. Marilyn. She believes you're separated, I said. That you and I are basically over. Silence. I'd like to meet her, I said. He laughed nervously. That's not a good idea. I think it is, I replied. For all of us. No, he said quickly. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. She deserves the truth. So do I. He leaned back, rubbing his face. Please, he said quietly. Don't do this. I didn't mean for it to go this far. And yet it did, I said. That night I messaged Claire. I didn't accuse. I didn't threaten. I told her who I was. I told her I thought we should talk. Woman to woman. She responded almost immediately. Oh my God. I had no idea. He said. I need to see you, she wrote. Please. We met 2 days later at the same cafe. She looked smaller up close. Younger. Nervous. Her hands shook as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. I'm so sorry, she said before I could speak. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, I said. Her shoulders sagged with relief. Then confusion. He told me you were basically done, she said. That you stayed because of the bills. That you didn't love him anymore. I nodded. He lied. She swallowed hard. He told me I was his future. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw myself years ago. Trusting. Hopeful. Believing love was enough. He told us both what we needed to hear, I said gently. She wiped her eyes. What are you going to do? I took a slow breath. I'm going to tell the truth, I said. And then I'm going to let the law do the rest. When I stood to leave, she reached for my hand. I'm sorry, she said again. For all of it. So am I replied. As I walked out, I felt lighter than I had in months. The confrontation was coming. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I didn't confront Richard right away. There's a certain power in patience. Not the passive kind that swallows pain, but the deliberate kind that waits until the ground is solid beneath your feet. I needed time. Not to cool down, but to prepare. The house felt different after I met Claire. Quieter. Not because Richard spoke less, he actually spoke more, but because I had stopped filling in the spaces for him. I listened now. Truly listened. To what he said and to what he avoided. He talked about the future as if it were guaranteed. As if he hadn't fractured it with his own hands. One evening, as I folded laundry, he stood in the doorway watching me. You've been distant, he said. I kept folding. I've been tired. He nodded, accepting that answer because it was convenient. The next day, I moved half of our remaining savings into an account in my name. Denise had explained my rights clearly. I documented every medical payment I had made. Every transfer. Every receipt. I didn't hide anything. I simply stopped pretending we were still operating as one unit. When Richard noticed, he didn't say anything. Or maybe he didn't want to see it. Illness can make people selfish in ways they don't recognize. It narrows their vision until only their own survival matters. I tried to remind myself of that when I felt the anger rise. But illness doesn't teach you how to lie. One Saturday morning, I told him I needed to talk. He sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around his coffee mug. The same mug I'd bought him years ago because it said still standing in faded blue letters. I know about Claire, I said. He didn't deny it. He didn't argue. He just sighed. I didn't want to hurt you, he said quietly. I waited. She made me feel normal, he continued. Not sick. Not weak. Just me. And I didn't? I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than any lie. You reminded me of what I was losing, he said. She reminded me of what I could still have. There it was. I nodded slowly. You let her believe she was your future. He looked down. I didn't think it would last. But it did, I said. And it cost me. I slid the folder across the table. He opened it. Scanned the pages. His face drained of color as he realized what it was. I've paid over 80% of your treatment costs, I said. From my income. My savings. My retirement. He looked up sharply. I never asked you to. You didn't have to, I replied. Marriage is an agreement. Or at least it used to be. He pushed the folder away. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done being generous in silence, I said. And I'm done being lied to. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. Are you leaving me? I considered the question. I'm leaving this version of us, I said. The one where I give and you take without honesty. His voice cracked. I was sick. Yes, I said gently. And I was your wife. That afternoon he packed a bag. Not because I asked him to, but because for the first time the weight of his choices had become visible. He went to stay with a friend. Not Claire. She had already ended things. She texted me later that night. I told him not to contact me again, she wrote. I'm so sorry. I replied with a simple thank you. The days that followed were strange. Quiet. Not peaceful exactly, but honest. I slept better. Ate more regularly. The house felt less tense, like it could finally exhale. Richard called every day. Sometimes to talk about logistics. Sometimes to apologize. Sometimes just to sit in silence on the other end of the line. I never meant to fall in love with her, he said once. I believe you, I replied. But intention doesn't erase impact. The legal process moved slowly, methodically. There was no drama, no courtroom scene, just paperwork, conversations, negotiations. In the end, we reached an agreement. He would repay a portion of what I had covered. Not all, he didn't have it, but enough to acknowledge the imbalance. Enough to make the truth tangible. We would separate our finances fully. We would sell the house. That was the hardest part. On the day the realtor came to take photos, I walked through each room one last time. I touched the door frame where we'd marked each other's heights as a joke years ago. I stood in the kitchen where we'd danced to the radio late at night. Back when life felt simpler. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had already done my crying. Richard came by to collect the last of his things. He stood in the living room, hands in his pockets, looking around like a guest. I'm sorry, he said again. I nodded. I know. I hope one day you can forgive me, he added. I'm working on it, I said. For my sake. Not yours. As he turned to leave, he paused. You didn't ruin me, he said quietly. You just stopped protecting me from myself. After the door closed, I sat on the couch and let the silence settle. It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Healing doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in small, almost forgettable moments. The first morning you wake up without dread sitting on your chest. The first time you laugh and don't immediately feel guilty for it. The first grocery trip where you only buy food for yourself and realize that's okay. After Richard moved out, I stayed in the house until it sold. The rooms echoed more than they used to. At night I could hear the refrigerator hum. The clock ticking in the hallway. Sounds I'd never noticed before now felt loud, insistent. But they didn't scare me. They grounded me. I began to take long walks in the evenings. No destination. Just movement. I passed neighbors I'd waved to for years but never really known. Some smiled. Some stopped to talk. Word had traveled quietly the way it always does. I didn't correct anyone's assumptions. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I had learned that I didn't owe my story to people who only wanted pieces of it. Claire reached out once more about a month later. I hope you're doing okay, she wrote. I've started therapy. I needed to say thank you for telling me the truth when you didn't have to. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, take care of yourself. That was all. Healing doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in small, almost forgettable moments. The first morning you wake up without dread sitting on your chest. The first time you laugh and don't immediately feel guilty for it. The first grocery trip where you only buy food for yourself and realize that's okay. After Richard moved out, I stayed in the house until it sold. The rooms echoed more than they used to. At night I could hear the refrigerator hum. The clock ticking in the hallway. Sounds I'd never noticed before now felt loud, insistent. But they didn't scare me. They grounded me. I began to take long walks in the evenings. No destination. Just movement. I passed neighbors I'd waved to for years but never really known. Some smiled. Some stopped to talk. Word had traveled quietly the way it always does. I didn't correct anyone's assumptions. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I had learned that I didn't owe my story to people who only wanted pieces of it. Claire reached out once more about a month later. "I hope you're doing okay," she wrote. "I've started therapy. I needed to say thank you for telling me the truth when you didn't have to." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, "Take care of yourself." That was all. I didn't feel bitterness toward her anymore. Just a distant sadness for both of us. For the version of womanhood that teaches us to compete instead of recognize each other. Richard's health continued to improve. I heard that through mutual acquaintances, not from him. I was glad. Truly. I had loved him once. That doesn't disappear just because the marriage ends. Changes shape. It softens. It learns boundaries. When the house sold, I moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't symbolic. It was just mine. The first night there, I sat on the floor with a bowl of soup and ate in silence. The windows were open. I could hear traffic in the distance, a dog barking somewhere below. Life going on. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't holding my breath. I started spending my weekends differently. I took a pottery class, burned my hands more than once, laughed at myself when my bowls came out crooked. I volunteered at the local cancer support center, not because I wanted to relive that chapter but because I understood it. Caregiving leaves marks you don't see until much later. One afternoon, a woman sat beside me during a break. She was exhausted, angry, scared. "I don't recognize my husband anymore," she said quietly. I looked at her hands. They shook slightly just like mine once had. "You're not wrong for noticing that," I told her. "And you're not wrong for needing help too." She cried then. And I stayed. Not to fix anything. Just to bear witness. That's when I understood something important. I hadn't lost my marriage and found myself afterward. I had found myself because I stopped abandoning myself to keep the marriage alive. Months later, Richard called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. "I just wanted you to know," he said, voice softer than I remembered. "I'm in remission." "I'm glad," I replied. And I meant it. There was a pause. Then, "I'm sorry it took losing you to see how much you carried." I closed my eyes. Let the words settle. "I hope you learn from it," I said. "For whoever comes next." When the call ended, I didn't feel relief. Or sadness. Or triumph. I felt complete. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. I still had lonely evenings. Still had moments when memories surfaced unexpectedly. The smell of his cologne in a crowd. A song we used to play on road trips. But the pain no longer owned me. It informed me. I learned that love without honesty is just another form of neglect. That loyalty doesn't mean silence. That dignity is not something you reclaim through revenge, but through truth, boundaries, and self-respect. I paid for my husband's cancer treatment because I believed in the vows we made. I walked away when I realized I was the only one still honoring them. And I don't regret either choice. Because both came from the same place. Love. People sometimes ask me if I would do it all again. If I would still stay up late sorting pills. Still sit in waiting rooms that smelled like antiseptic and fear. Still sign checks that drained my future to save someone else's present. And the answer is yes. Because love, real love, isn't measured by how it ends. It's measured by how honestly you showed up when it mattered. I showed up fully. I loved without cutting corners. I gave without keeping score. And when the truth came, I faced it without becoming cruel. That matters to me. What I've learned is this. Being faithful doesn't mean staying silent when you're being erased. Being strong doesn't mean staying where you're being lied to. And dignity doesn't come from winning. It comes from walking away whole. I didn't scream. I didn't expose him publicly. I didn't try to destroy anyone. I chose truth. I chose fairness. And I chose myself. And in doing so, I didn't lose my heart. I protected it. If you're listening to this and you're caring for someone who's slowly taking more than they give. If you're loving someone who's asking you to disappear so they can feel whole, I want you to know something. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to choose dignity over devotion. Love should never require you to betray yourself. So I'll leave you with this question, one I had to answer for myself. If the truth came out tomorrow, would you recognize yourself in how you handled it? If this story touched something in you, share your thoughts below. I read them. Truly. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, stories about truth, betrayal, healing, and quiet strength, subscribe and stay with me a while. You're not alone, and neither was I.